Hey guys, and welcome back to another Dugout podcast. And today we are joined by Dundee United defender Tam Scobbie and Rangers blogger James Black. So it's only fitting to start off with the Rangers versus Progres match, which obviously seen Rangers getting dumped out of the Europa League. How do you feel about that one, James?
It was a shambles. You're watching a team that looked nothing more than they were going through the motions against a team that they looked like they turned up and they just had to show up to beat them. It was nowhere near good enough. They had a number of players they didn't look to have the motivation, they didn't look to... They were doing simple things and get them wrong really easily. I lost count of times that simple 5-yard passes went astray. They picked the wrong balls, they didn't spot runs, and they lost, to be honest, two very cheap goals that they really shouldn't have been losing to set pieces.
Yeah, it was shambolic from what, well, I've seen, because it's like what Celtic do sometimes. Well, I would imagine, that is what Celtic done at Lincoln Red Imps. Well, walked on the park and was like, alright, well, we're going to win. And then they never won, and then they became the laughing stock for a wee bit, and then they went invincible and then won the treble. So I'm not saying Rangers are going to go invincible and all that, but they're going to have to bounce back and finish second and push Celtic into a title race, like a harder race compared to the last one. Because that was Aberdeen's job, when it really should have been a Rangers job.
Definitely. I mean, you're looking... I think it's a bit unfair to judge Gishinia on the back of one result, and a lot of the players. You've got, I think there's 4 or 5 guys that started on Tuesday night that have made 90 minutes, 80 minutes worth of game time for Rangers so far. So it's hard to judge guys that have just moved to the country, they're just getting used to their surroundings, their teammates, simple things like that. But at the same time, it's a very big black mark against their name. And a lot of the good faith that they had already, it's completely dissolved.
Yeah.
They're likely not going to get away with silly wee mistakes as the season goes on, because they need to be on top form right through the season. They can't afford to be in a place where come Christmas time, the title race is over.
Yeah, because that would be the worst possible scenario. Like Christmas and the title race is finished, and then the Rangers fan would be calling for their heads, because
absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you think of that, Tam? As a footballer, then what do you think the players could bounce back from?
Well, I totally agree with what's just been said there. I think it's too early to judge him on going on one game. I think he's made 9 signings this summer. It's going to take time for them to gel, to know each other's game. As it's rightly been pointed out, some of them have only played 90 minutes, and it's difficult going in to play these European teams where they're midway through their season. I think we saw that with St Johnstone as well. But I think after that game, then the players that were involved will know exactly what it means to play for Rangers Football Club. I mean, a massive football club, and the demand success. And I think because the success has been there for a number of years, then players that come to the club, it might take a result like that for them to realise, the size of the club that they've come to play for, and the pressure that they're going to be under, and whether that be in a Europa League qualifier, a Scottish Cup tie, or the league, then they know that the demands are there. So, as you rightly pointed out, it is going to take time. I think he'll be working hard with his players to make sure that this season's a lot more better than last season, in terms of the amount of points difference towards Celtic. They'll be wanting to push Celtic as far as they can, and I think if it gets around Christmas time, then, and it's whatever the situation is, that's when the manager will be judged. If they get around Christmas time and they're in the same position they were last year, being so far away from Celtic, then obviously there'll be pressure from the fans, the board, whatever it may be, towards the manager. But if the gap isn't so big and they're performing well and pushing Celtic, then he'll be having a successful season. So it is going to take time, and that result might just be the result that the players that have come in need, to realise that, that is not acceptable for a club of Rangers Football Club size and stature to go there and to get beat off a team that had conceded 40 goals in the last 7 or 8 games and only scored 1. That's something that should never happen.
Definitely. And you've been involved in European games against smaller teams with smaller nations, Tam. Do you think there's a certain element of Scottish clubs, maybe not arrogance, but they underestimate teams for these countries a little bit?
Well, to be fair, I was with St Johnstone. I mean, St Johnstone aren't a massive club compared to Rangers. So going into these games, we were more looking forward to it because, we had never ventured in there. I don't know what the situation is with Rangers. I think it would have been better if Rangers had played away from home the first time and brought them back to Ibrox, and it was the same with us a few years ago. I mean, the games that when I was at St Johnstone we had lost, it was predominantly when we had played at home first and had to go away and get a result. Normally when you come back to your home ground, you've got a result and you've got something to kind of cling on to and then push forward and get the result. But for a team like Rangers, playing against a team that, as I've said, had conceded 40 goals in their European games and only scored 1, it is a big embarrassment for the club, and the manager and the players will be feeling it, and the fans that made the journey over will be feeling it, and that's something that they'll have to accept as professionals and take it on the chin, and then make sure that in the season that comes ahead that they go and perform, because the fans would have loved to trip over, and then they're coming home and they've been beat off a team where they should be nowhere near getting close to Rangers. And I saw the goals, and they're very bad goals to lose. But as I say, it's difficult for Scottish football teams going into Europe so early on. I think we've saw that in the last few years, but it's something that we have to deal with. And by all means, Rangers should have dealt with that club very, very easily, but they never.
Yeah, well, Rangers, they should have dealt with them. But there must be plenty of, well, not arrogance as such, but they must have thought, well, if it didn't be arrogance, it would have been the team morale, because they wouldn't have got to have known each other as much. Like, some of them, I'd imagine, wouldn't have the best of English, and then they're coming over, and then they'd just be clash with the others.
Absolutely. Some of the comments that I've seen over the last couple of days about it was that there's 2 wingers in particular. So it was Dalcio or Daniel Candias at points, and obviously they didn't have the same kind of chemistry that Lee Wallace and Barry Mackay had. But then you're looking at guys that have only played 1 or 2 games together. They've played a bounce game, maybe, if you're lucky, on top of that. So they're not going to know the type of runs that they make. They're not going to know quite how they like things being set for them. So it's, as Tam said, the timing of it certainly isn't great. It's not something that helps Scottish clubs in Europe. I mean, you're looking, a lot of teams have only just started their pre-season programmes either early this week or late last week. So when you've got Scottish teams already competing in European competition this early, there will be eggs and faces. It happened with Hearts last year. Celtic very, very nearly went out to Lincoln Red Imps. Something's got to give with it.
So, do you think they should change it and then have a summer football here in Scotland?
I think summer football would be great. I mean, I think if you look at the European clubs, not only does it help probably the individual Scottish clubs, but it would help the national side as well, probably. And it would set teams up to better deal with this. I mean, if you take Rangers 15 games into the season against this team, it possibly could have been a cricket score. Once the team's gelled and you've played a numerous amount of games with each other, then these things are obviously a lot easier. But that's for the men to speak at the top level. I mean, everybody's got an opinion, but it would all depend whether it was feasible, if it was financially better, if the fans wish for it. They needed to have a poll and see if they wanted it, and then take it from there. But on a player's point of view, it isn't great, as we've just touched on there. You come in for a week or two's training, and then you maybe try and squeeze in 2 games, and then you're right into competitive football, and it's difficult. I mean, it is difficult, because even in those 2 weeks, you're still working hard, you're putting pressure on your body. I mean, I think the Rangers and St Johnstone boys never even had 3 weeks off, to recover from the season they've just had. So all these things take their toll. And it's just something that we need to look at. And it's the great old debate that gets brought up every year when Scottish teams participate in Europe. And as you would say, the falter against probably the lesser teams. But that's probably just down to the fact that their match sharpness is there before, the Scottish teams that are playing them.
Even in terms of just sliding the calendar just a little bit, Scottish football seems to have this idea that we've got to remain traditional in that the Scottish Cup final and the FA Cup final have got to match up. You've got to have games at New Year's weekend. You've got to have your Christmas calendar. Even if they brought the back end of the season forward a wee bit, so maybe the season would end the back end of March, start of April. So you're getting that extra few weeks there, and then you kick off your league campaign in June, start of July. Then I think even that would give Scottish clubs a real kickstart going into European games.
Yeah, but it would be good. Summer football, as Tam said, it would it would stop Scottish football teams or clubs being. It would give them more preparation for the European games, because they've got, as you said, 10 to 15 games, competitive games to gel, instead of just being being chucked into the deep end of the European football. But then again, it's a professional team versus a semi-professional team, so really the professional teams should be coming out on top, but it is.
Right. So make football quite so enjoyable.
Yeah. Right, so Tam, you started off at Falkirk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was it like starting off at Falkirk?
It was great. I mean, John Hughes was manager. Eddie May was the youth manager. Brian Rice was assistant manager. I think at that time it was a case of trying to bring youth through. So I was very fortunate in the fact that I just hit that kind of peak time in terms of Falkirk's production line, where there was a number of young guys coming through and got the opportunity to go and play for a great club. I mean, I'm originally from Falkirk. I supported Falkirk when I was a kid, so it was great to go and play there and be given the opportunity.
Yeah, that's another thing. When Scottish people get an opportunity, as somebody said, I've totally forgot his name, but he said that our young Scottish footballers are more interested in Nando's and the cinema and stuff. So, Nando's and stuff wasn't a thing back in that day. But how motivated were you to become a footballer or make it a profession?
Totally motivated. I signed my first contract with Falkirk when I was 12 years old, and it was one of these old contracts where when you were in school you were always contracted to Falkirk, and then once you turned 16 you went full time. when I was 16 and came in full time, I wasn't actually being the professional footballer that I was meant to be. I was still going out with my friends and getting in a little bit of trouble and no living my life correctly, and that was something that John Hughes picked up on straight away and pretty much said to me, listen, you know, if you want to be a professional footballer, you need to live your life correctly in every possible way. And that's something that I did after that one meeting with him, only a few days into my apprenticeship, and that pretty much changed my life, because, you know, I started really, really, really getting hungry for the game as I trained more with the first team, as I watched them playing games and training and playing in front of the crowds. It's something that I wanted to achieve, and I think it's something that's there. I just think that, you know, a lot of kids go in there and possibly just go through the motions because they're at a club. You know, they might be signed to a club and think that, yes, that's me here, that's the hard work done. The hard work isn't done. The hard work is done. You can relax and possibly have a wee bit of a breather once you're in the first team and you've played 100 or 200 games. When you're 16, 17, 18, 19, you should be doing everything possible to make sure that you're in that squad and make sure that you're in the manager's thoughts. And from the moment I had that meeting with John Hughes, that was my total focus. I mean, I pretty much devoted everything I had to being a professional footballer, and that included, you know, staying in. I had to get rid of some of my friends that weren't great for me at the time, and that days were sacrifices that I had to make, and it's sacrifices that every young kid will probably need to make if they want to make it in the professional game. And I think that's the tough decisions that kids are facing nowadays, is do they want to go and hang out with their pals, and do they want to go to the cinema or Nando's or go out to nightclubs, or do they want to purely focus on becoming a professional footballer? Because, I mean, once you're there and you experience it, it's the best thing in life. You know, you think how many kids want to be a professional footballer when they grow up, and to the numbers that actually do, it's extraordinary how many people don't actually make it in the game compared to the ones that do. And it's the ones that do that want to put in the application and the determination, and that's something I avoid.
Yeah. So, and then the motivation for you, and then it eventually came, and then your debut on the 29th of July 2006. Do you remember that?
I was at the game against Hamilton.
You didn't remember your own debut? It was Dundee United.
No, that was my debut in the SPL. That one, I made my debut in the first division the year that Falkirk won the league. We played Hamilton away.
Oh, well, my facts are wrong. Right, okay.
and do you know why I remember that game?
Why?
Because John Hughes announced that I was playing. Well, I was on the bench. He sent me away to get a new suit. I showed up next game day, and John Hughes wasn't even at the game. He was down at Bradford watching a player. Brian Rice took the team.
Well.
Looking at Falkirk at that time, Tam, what do you think was the secret? Why do you think that they had such a conveyor belt of talent coming through? Because, I mean, there was some really, really good players come through Falkirk in that kind of early part of the 2000s. And you've got guys now, a handful of guys even now that are in the Premier League, English Championship, the Premiership in Scotland. And they really did have a reputation for bringing through some really, really good, hungry young players. Do you think that was Yogi and his coaching staff, or was that more on the guys the players that were trying to get themselves through?
I think mostly it would probably be on, like, once Yogi became manager, he wanted Falkirk run. Like, Falkirk aren't a massive club, but he wanted to run it. He wanted to run it like a massive club. So he wanted the training base. He wanted the training grounds to be perfect. I mean, when I was younger at Falkirk, we used to train on bowling greens. Like, he wanted everything to be as perfect as can be, so that it gave youngsters the opportunity, and there was no excuses. I mean, if you can't pass and control a ball on a bowling green, then what chance are you going to do it on a pitch? You know, at a stadium where the pitch is all dug up and stuff like that. So he kind of implemented this, and not only him, he had a really good guy in Eddie May who played for Falkirk, and I think he's now the head coach at Hibernian. He really, really, really worked a youngster to prepare him not only as in like physically and technically, but mentally as well to be able to go into our first team. I mean, because I made my debut at 16-year-old, and I'm going in there and playing with guys like Alan Kernahan and Kevin James, Russell Latape and that. These guys have played for years upon years, and I'm just this young kid going in. But because like he had set everything up, Yogi and Eddie for the 18s, it was almost like a seamless process. It didn't feel like you were jumping from the 18s to the first team, because Yogi used to want the young boys to train right next to the first team, to watch the first team, the training they did. The formation he played at Falkirk, he made the 19s, 17s, 16s, 15s, 14s, right down through the youth system to play the same formation, so that they knew exactly what he expected when eventually they came up to play in the first team. And that was a major factor in producing, as you say, the players that they did, and they produced a handful. And to be fair, they haven't stopped producing players, to be fair, once Yogi left. So obviously that's the success has been there, and it's literally just carried on. I just think it was at that point where they've said to themselves, right, let's stop, seeing the boundaries that we can't achieve. Let's imagine we're a big club. We want to play like a big club and try and produce like a big club, and to be fair, they've done great at that.
I mean, I'm local to Falkirk, and going back to that time when you'd have been kind of around about the 19s, I worked at Grangemouth Sports Complex.
Yeah.
So during the crappy weather, you would get Falkirk would come in, because I'm sure at the time they'd just moved to Little Kerse.
Yeah.
So it was just as the stadium was being built, so you could come into the complex in terrible weather, but you could also see there was a real togetherness in the squad. There wasn't a kind of us and them between the coaching staff and the players. There was one I remember, it was there was a story in the tabloids about Russell Latape and the love child or something. So Yogi phoned out the complex to get copies of that day's paper and to get them put on just the qualities used to training. Now I couldn't imagine that at certain places where, as I said, you've got that kind of, I'm the manager, so I'm on this level, and you're just a player, so you're a couple of levels below me. There seemed to be a real togetherness, a real bond in that squad, which I think it speaks a lot of kind of the work that Yogi and his staff do to get the players bang into what he's trying to do.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we went to Little Kerse and the place, it looked like a bomb site, and within like 3 or 4 weeks of getting in there, Yogi had us kids painting fences and fixing all the gravel out and making sure everything was clean and tidy, just to make sure that everything was in place for everybody to succeed. And the first team boys were no different. I mean, I remember Yogi chasing Russell about the training ground with one of the poles that sticks in the ground. He used to do it every day. And he just used to like have a laugh with him, and he treated all the first team players like he did the young players. He just demanded more of the young players, especially if he thought you were good enough to play. He would be at you every day. And he used to say to me, I used to have a go at him and say, why do you keep getting on at me? And he used to say, the day I stopped getting on at you is the day that I don't think you'll be a football player. And it's totally true. I mean, the more he got on at young boys and the more he got on at first team boys, it wasn't to try and like make them feel bad or put pressure on them. It was because he felt like they were going to be a good footballer for the club, and he always demanded the best. And the atmosphere at the time was unbelievable.
Oh, with me. Yeah, so Falkirk, so he made you believe in yourself, and then, you received your first red card, apparently, because I'm saying apparently now because you're making me double guess. Well, if what I'm reading it from is true, so you received it you tackled Chris Burke in a late tackle, and it resulted in a straight red card. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Never.
How did you feel?
I was absolutely gutted and terrified as well, because
Yogi.
it's always difficult going to Ibrox and Parkhead and playing against them at 11 then, so to go down to 10 then, it was a bit gut-wrenching, but I didn't feel it was a red card. Yogi told me he didn't think it was a red card, but he decided not to appeal it, which made me think he did think it was a red card. But it's one of these things. I mean, it wasn't a bad tackle. He literally skipped by me, and I tried to catch the ball, and I caught him. I mean, he got straight up right after, and the ref gave a red card. There was nothing malicious about it. But as you say, when you get sent off at places like these where you know it's going to be a tough afternoon, and it just makes it difficult for the boys, so you feel like you've let the boys down.
Yeah. And then apparently as well, you were dropped in the 07-08 season for a bad performance against Hart, or a seemingly bad performance against Hart. A couple of mistakes were made against Hart.
Probably. I mean,
Probably.
Yeah. Probably. I mean, I think if it's the game I'm thinking, I think you remember the Hearts had the boy called, was it Lara Kingston?
Aye.
The right midfielder. And to be fair, on that day,
Was he just like tearing it up?
Aye, it was just one of those days where everything went for him, and I couldn't really get near him. And I think the manager expected better, and I probably expected better. But you have these days in football where it just doesn't go your way, and for him that day he was absolutely outstanding. It was an unbelievable performance by him, not only him and Hearts as well. And obviously I was the one that got the rough end of the stick when I got back in the changing room and in the foreseeable future.
It was a right good Hearts team that season. Because I've looked up that match there. It was a 4-2 defeat. There's a quote for you where you mentioned Larry Kingston. And you say it was something you wanted to improve from. So it was a really, really good Hearts side. It was probably a good learning curve as well for a young lad at the time, 19-year-old, playing against a quality player like Kingston, like some of the other guys at Rangers and Celtic and whoever else at the time. Do you think that helped you kind of come on as a player, playing against this higher quality players at such a young age?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, listen, I think the best thing for a young player is to go and play. I know like they've introduced this 20s league in that. But back in the day, it was literally like by the time you were 18, if you hadn't played in the first team or been about the first team, then you probably weren't going to play. They introduced this 20s league to try and make it fairer, to give younger lads a bit more time. But I mean, I remember going to Murray Park and playing Rangers, and you would have like 5 first team boys, coming out and playing against you, and you're like, as a young kid, you're thinking, wow, these guys, you used to watch them play on the TV, and you knew it was going to be really tough. But these were games that pretty much moulded you into the player you are, because if you're a 16, 17-year-old kid and you're playing a reserve game against guys like Rangers and Celtic who've played maybe 50, 60, 70 games for Celtic, and they've got more experience in it, and you can play in them and learn from it, then it is going to help you. And that is one of the things that definitely Yogi tried to do. Every reserve game back there, he would have 4, 5, 6 kids in the squad just to make sure that they kind of get a taste of what it's like to play against these quality players. And I mean, at the time I was coming through, Rangers and Celtic had players like that in abundance. And I mean, you picked up on the Hearts squad as well. I think that was one of the strongest squads that Hearts have had in a number of years, and that I can think of. And it was good to test yourself, and I think that's the best thing for young kids to do is test yourself against good players. And one day it might not go your way, but you'll learn from it, you'll get experience from it, and you'll come back and you'll be better for it.
Speaking of young players coming through, there's been this talk again of being introducing cold teams in Scotland, which we'll see how it happens. And just on a kind of rough level, what would be your thoughts on that, introducing, whether it's just Rangers and Celtic, or there's maybe 4 or 5 teams that come in through the Lowland and Highland leagues? Do you think that's the kind of ideas that we should be looking at to bring boys through? I
don't think it is. I mean, I get the idea when they made it, instead of it being like 18s that went to 20s, because players' progressions they don't happen as quickly from 16 to 18. It might take them an extra couple of years, but I always preferred the literally you had your 18s, your reserves, and then your first team, and you knew pretty much every Tuesday when you went to play the reserves, because of the size of the squads that Rangers and Celtic and that had, you were going to be playing against top opposition, and I think that's the best way forward. I mean, the Colts thing's difficult because, as you say, it's okay for guys like for teams like Rangers and Celtic and possibly Aberdeen, but out of them, then you're talking that the squad for certain SPL clubs it's not big enough and strong enough to do that. I mean, they rely a lot on their young kids, if there's any problems in their first team. So to try and put them into a Colts situation, it possibly could be a bit detrimental. I think it's better if you kind of say you got 5 or 6 of the young boys that you thought were going to be really good. You introduce them to the first team through the reserve leagues, and then you build from there, and you just add and take out so that everybody gets a taster, and it puts them under pressure to perform, and then you can see how they perform. I think it's a lot more difficult if you were to take the full team and say, right, you're going to play in a Colts team, you're going to play against professionals, because ultimately, the senior professionals that are playing against should come out on top. If you're playing a reserve game, you might have 3 or 4 youngsters playing surrounded by 7 senior pros where they can help them along, and it's a fair game. But it's an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out and see how it goes.
I mean, I watched a lot of 20s football last season, and I remember seeing it was Rangers versus Stennismuir in the Challenge Cup. And I mean, you've got some of these young guys that you've seen them come into the Rangers team towards the end of last season. So like Jamie Barjona, Serge Atakaye, the lad Wilson. But when they played against Stennismuir, they looked like wee boys playing against adults. Yeah. Stennismuir's side, they had the kind of street smarts. It was, it was wee ways to get away with niggly fouls. It was making those clever runs that the boys want to get in development football. So I do think it's more about getting them into first teams and getting them playing, even if it's getting them out on loan to play regular first team football. But I think getting them out playing quote unquote adult football is the big thing for them.
No, I totally agree. I think that's the best way forward. I mean, for a young kid to go and learn his trade, it's best to go out and play against guys that have been doing the trade for 10, 15 years and seeing how they cope with it. And it is difficult for young kids, as you've said there. I mean, playing against Stennismuir, you could see the difference with Stennismuir. I mean, imagine if a Colts went and played a team in the Championship or something like that or whatever, then you would probably see a massive difference. And it just helps, as I said, when I was coming through with the reserve, it helped the fact that you had 5, 6, 7 first team players there that would help you through the games, So, I totally agree. I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, because in the Ironbrew Cup, they're doing Colt teams. All of the Premier League teams have got Colt teams in it, actually. Yeah. Yeah,
all 12 Premiership teams have got a Colt team in it. Yeah. And then you've got 2 Irish, 2 Welsh and 2 Northern Irish in it as well.
Yeah. So, but they shouldn't be they shouldn't be using a cup such as the Scottish League Challenge Cup as an experimental game. It's such a prestigious cup.
I think there's certain political moves for it as well, by getting the cross-border stuff. I think it's more about that.
Yeah, so it's like the British Cup is what they're wanting.
It's a precursor to something like that.
Yeah, so it's like the Anglo-British Cup coming back. And
looking at the foreign teams that's in it, you've got Linfield Crusaders, the New Saints, Connors Quay, Bray Wanderers and Sligo Rovers. Off the top of my head, 4 of these 6 sides were involved in European football this summer.
Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, you could potentially have Hibs under 20s travelling to go and play a team that's qualifying for the Champions League early in the summer. And it's a bit of a kind of odd imbalance there.
It's odd, but it would be good for the young boys because they're playing against not not the elite, but like still a European opposition that's tested themselves against the. Well, again, they've not even tested themselves because they're not going to go and get that far. But like they've had the experience and they'll know. Oh well, they'll know the tricks like in Europe.
Now, interestingly, they've tried similar in England with what was the Johnson Spade Trophy. God knows what they've called it there. But they done it with under 23 teams. And the fan reaction to it has been horrific. There's been protests, there's been boycotts, there's no TB team hashtags and all that usual jazz. I think there's some of the games were drawing nothing more than treble figures. So it's really backfired down south. So
what I would say though is instead, like, if I think they should speak to the young players as well. I mean, if I was a young player and I got asked to stay and play for the Colts team because they're in the Iron Brew Cup, but
I would be annoyed.
I had a professional club wanting me to go on loan. Then what's the best option for them? Is the best option for them to stay there and play in this Colts team in the Iron Brew Cup, or is the best option for them to go play at a senior club and maybe make 35 appearances playing against men? For me, it would totally be going on loan and playing against experienced pros week in, week out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
watching these games last season, almost to a T, you would see them after 65, 70 minutes, it would just die away. You would get the odd one where it would be a frenetic 90-minute end-to-end match. But for a large part, once the game's got to 70 minutes, 3 subs on each side, the game died a death, and they just played at whatever the result was going to be. So you get to the position where the development league football it's good to a point, but it doesn't serve the purpose that it's supposed to serve.
Right, so yeah, it doesn't really serve the purpose because you would much rather play like a professional teams, or at least play against like Scottish teams because it will give you the better opportunity to grow along with.
Even when you look at some of the guys in the senior Scotland side just now, Andy Robertson, who was playing regular first team football at Queen's Park at 16. You've got Kieran Tierney, who's playing regular football at Celtic at 17. You've got a whole host of guys that were playing in the first division up here. Some like Graham Dorrans, for example, playing first division football, 17, 18-year-old at Partick Thistle, Livingston. And you see these guys that played regular senior football at a young age kick on quicker, generally kick on to a higher level than guys that maybe didn't make the breakthrough until they are 21, 22-year-old.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of players here which have broken through at such a young age because Hamilton have done it. Hamilton are good for, or at least were good for young players. Like,
I mean, they had a point where you had the MacArthur, McCarthy, Brian Easton's another one that came through at a young age, and he wound up going to, he was in the Premier League at Burnley. You've got Scotty Arfield that's at Burnley now. He was another. He'll have come through around about the same time as you at Falkirk, Tam?
Yeah, me and him were in the same YT together at Falkirk.
I mean, there's another one playing first team football at a young age. Alright, he's playing for Canada now, but it's another one that just shows that you're getting that regular first team football at a young age, and you can go as far as you want. If you've got the right attitude, the right mentality, these boys can go as far as they want if they've got the right grounding.
Yeah, and well, plenty of them have actually diverted away to the likes of Canada or the Republic of Ireland instead of Scotland, or playing for Scotland, like McGeady, MacArthur. No, sorry, or McCarthy. Yeah.
James McCarthy.
Yeah. Like, well,
Put a lot of
would
them, I
you?
think Scott Arfield to the biggest
Yeah.
loss.
Yeah. I would have said McGeady was, but then Snodgrass, to be fair. Yeah. Snodgrass, Burke as well. Now his move to Germany. But, well, he came through the English system, I believe.
He came through at Forest.
Yeah.
The thing I didn't get with Scott Arfield is Scott Arfield played 38 games in the Premier League for Burnley. Never once got a shout for Scotland.
Couldn't get a sniff until Canada were interested. It was madness.
Couldn't get a chance, and knowing him personally, and I think he had spoke to Strachan, and Strachan had said that they had a fair abundance of players there that were obviously in the squad, and it was obviously difficult to break in. But I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the players that were there, but there were guys there that were playing for the Championship football. You know, if I'm the manager, I'm thinking, right, he's playing in the Premier League week in, week out. He's definitely going to be involved in my squads. But for some reason, he wasn't, and you know, he's decided to go to Canada.
Some of the guys that were getting picked at times were lucky if they were playing 1 or 2 games a month.
Yeah.
And yet Scott Arfield played weekly at Burnley, and he couldn't get a look in. It was all a bit odd.
Yeah, because what Gordon does, if he picks players, like, well, based on their club, because, like, he only tends to pick, like, Celtic players, and, like he doesn't pick players on forum, is what I've seen, because if he did, like, he would have picked a lot more young players, and players like Scott Arfield, he just would have picked like loads of players, and he never even played blooming Burke against blooming
I think there's a certain mentality thing when it comes to some managers that are still not set in their ways, that it's the guys that they trust and the guys that they know, but they would rather go with tried and tested players that maybe aren't performing at a level that they once were, but at one point were fantastic players. So he knows what they can do, so he'll stick with them until he really has to. And it's changing now in Scobbs, where you're seeing more and more managers taking punts on young guys and young players, and even kind of unknown foreign quantities. So hopefully, your man at Hearts, Ian Cathro, he's a really good example. That's just he's somebody that he's got his way of doing it. It's not quite the norm, so he's going to go it, and he takes a hell of a flack for it. But that's how he wants to do things, and that's how he's going to do things. So, fair play to the guy. And it's something that's hopefully going to see much more technical players come through in Scotland.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, Cathro, he's a young manager, and he's going to like bring in a lot new different tactics, ideas for the Hearts team. But the only problem is, or worry is that he's like, as people say, he is a Levine's puppet. Like,
Yeah,
but I don't really think so. But like, that's just what people say.
I've read that and I've heard that, but I mean, given the reputation the guy come to Scotland with, he'd been assistant manager in Portugal, he'd been assistant manager in Valencia, he'd been a coach at Newcastle. Yeah. Do you think he's going to come up here and take his first standalone job as manager? And be a puppet for something? And I mean, Craig Levine's got a great reputation in Scotland and everything else, but I don't see somebody that's that young and that driven taking particularly such a high profile job like Hearts.
Yeah.
It's one of the top 4 or 5 jobs in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're not going to come in and just be a yes man for somebody.
I think Craig will be there, like behind the scenes, just
giving him advice,
giving him a few ideas, a wee bit of advice, a wee bit of experience. If he's needing it, I think he'll be a man that, you know, if Cathro's got any questions, he'll go and ask him. He'll probably give him an honest opinion. Maybe say to him, you know, maybe we should try this or try that. But ultimately, you know, the decision will come down to Ian Cathro. I mean, mean, if you're going for a job interview and you're told you're going to come to Hearts, but you're going to be playing second fiddle to the man upstairs, then there wasn't much point in taking the job. I mean, every job that seemed to come up lately, his name was put forward, so it wouldn't have been as if he was short any options. If he turned the Hearts job down, he would have got a job eventually. So, I don't think that Cathrow's a puppet man. I think Cathrow's in there. He's got his own ideas. He'll probably work with Craig Levein. Almost Craig Levein will be like a mentor type to him because he's been there and done it, and stuff like that. But definitely, I think Cathro will be the one that's making the decisions, and I think that's the way it's probably got to be.
I think too, as well, when you look at Cathrow's relative experience within the top level of Scottish football, at least, he's going to have somebody like Levein behind him that's got the idea of how things work in Scotland and how you approach things and how you even approach certain people. He's, to all intents and purposes, he's come into Scotland as a foreigner he's never really been involved at the top level in Scotland, so it'll be something, a culture shock to him. He'll be used to the continental ways, having spent so much time in Spain and Portugal, and even working with Benitez at Newcastle. And then coming up to Hearts, where there's going to be pressure on him at Hearts, so he's not going to get to be in a position where he can take it easy and results don't matter that much. As long as he wins one game this month or 2 games the next month, he's got a demanding fan base. He's got a good squad of players at his disposal. So fans see those things and fans expect relative success. So it's good luck to the guys, all I can say.
Yeah, well. Right, so, let's get sort of back on to Tam's career. So, after Falkirk, you obviously went to St Johnstone.
Yeah.
So, how did that feel, moving on from a team?
Yeah, it was a bit strange because I've been at Falkirk for so long, but it just came a time where, it wasn't feasible for me and the club to kind of stay there. I had a few options elsewhere in the SPL, but once I spoke to St Johnstone, the kind of vibes I was getting off them and what they wanted to do and push forward, the decision was pretty simple, and I'm glad I went. I mean, Callum Davidson was the left back there at the time, and I spoke to Callum quite a bit at Stirling University because sometimes St Johnstone trained there while we were training there with Falkirk, and just to go and have a wee bit of experience under Cal as well. I mean, Cal's a player that's been there and done it in the English Premier League as well, so all the kind of things fitted in, and it was, to be fair, it was a correct decision that I made.
Yeah, and then you went on to play in Europe as well. So
yeah.
How was that then? Did
Brilliant.
you underestimate any teams?
No, we never underestimated any teams. I mean, to be fair, we had some really tricky ties. We played. We had Rosenborg one year.
And you actually beat them as well. But
yeah, beat Rosenborg. We played Lucerne. We beat them. We went to Turkey and played Eskerispor. I think that's the name. That was an experience. That was an unbelievable experience.
That would have been great, because Turkish fans are just, they are out of this world. They're like pyros, blooming everything. Anything which is banned in Scotland, they've got it.
Yeah, it was something different. I mean, we went over there and no knowing what to expect, and literally an hour and a half before the game, there was 10,000 people in the big main stand, letting off fireworks and that. It was crazy, but I think St Johnstone and them became quite close over the two ties, and they still keep in touch. And I mean, these kind of ties you go into, you can't underestimate these teams, because I mean, you know they're going to be good players. There's probably been a couple of times where we've underestimated teams. I mean, we played a team called Alashkert from I think they were from Armenia. I think we played the first tie at home, away. Sorry, a first tie away, and it was 40-degree heat. But we underestimated them a little bit, and they ended up putting us out. But as I say, it's difficult in Europe, especially if you're playing against these kind of sides like Rosenborg and Lucerne as such, where you know their budget's a lot bigger than yours. I mean, the wee guy for Rosenborg, the right back, he's now at Celtic, the boy Gamboa. You know, it shows like what a good player he was. So we never underestimated pretty much anybody when we went into those games, because we knew that, you know, for a club like St Johnstone, it was a great achievement to be there, and we just wanted to embrace it.
Did playing in Europe ever give you a taste to maybe go elsewhere in a longer terms, maybe going to a season in Scandinavia or Turkey or something like that, or was it never really something that's crossed your mind much?
I had the opportunity a couple of times when I was younger to go abroad. I had the opportunity to go to Azerbaijan once, and the opportunity to go to Poland as well. But you know, I was enjoying myself at Falkirk at the time. I was playing first team football every week, and it wasn't really something that I was kind of pursuing. I mean, I know, like, sometimes you hear these horror stories when you go abroad about not being paid and this and that, and it does play on your mind. You're thinking, if I go, I'm settled here, I'm enjoying my football. If I go somewhere and things change, then what's going to happen? But no, I did have a couple of opportunities, but for me, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to play in Scotland and try and play at the highest possible level in Scotland in the SPL, and I've been fortunate enough to do that for the majority of my career.
Yeah, so, well, as you said, like, you're settled here, and it's quite shown because, well, you've played like over like 200 games in Scotland, and 100 in each team, St Johnstone and Falkirk, and obviously you've not played yet for Dundee United. So how did it feel signing for Dundee United? Because they've had a lot of history. Obviously the only team in Scotland to have a 100% record against Barcelona.
Yeah, and I was made aware of that before I even signed for them. I mean, when I was coming up with Falkirk, when we first came to the SPL, Dundee were a massive club. You know, they were always there or thereabouts, challenging for trophies, getting to semi-finals, finals and that. So when the opportunity came, then, you know, it was something that I thought I'd, you know, definitely like to pursue. They've got ambitions to get back to where they feel that the club deserves to be. I mean, I think they've got a fantastic fan base, you know, out with the old Firm and Hearts and that, and they're right up there with a fan base as well. So it was a very attractive offer to come and play for a club that were wanting to pretty much get promoted and win the league and get back in the Premiership and be part of a successful side. So, you know, it was great to get the opportunity. Yeah.
So, and as well about the Dundee, right? So you were also offered a or maybe not offered a contract, but you were in talks with Dundee. So, well, so why did you not pick Dundee?
I know Neil McCann personally, and there was just a conversation, you know, with Neil about, you know, would there be interest. You know, he said that there possibly could be interest, but he wasn't in a position at the minute, which, you know, I mean, he was as honest as he could be with me at the time. He had said that, you know, maybe in a week or two there'll be an opportunity that I can come back to you and say, listen, there's such and such or whatever. But he was totally honest, and you know, I respected him for that. So then once we heard from Dundee United, you know, once I'd sat down and spoke to the club and the manager, everything he said was great. I mean, I knew already they had signed Billy King, James Keatings. So they were really trying to put a squad together that was going to, you know, definitely challenge for the title, if not win it, and get them back into the Premier League, where ultimately that's where I want to play, and hopefully next year I can play there for Dundee United.
Alright, so the Dundee rumours were just blown out of proportion because the telly or the Evening Telegraph were making it out like it was like a close deal, like it was about to be signed, and then you just switched to United, so just blown out of proportion.
Well, you know what the press are like.
Yeah.
I think they're looking for a decent story, but
Yeah.
no, I mean, I spoke to Neil once. I'm quite friendly with Neil. Play golf with him quite a bit in that as well. So once he got the job, I wished him all the best. And then it just so happened a few weeks later, I was in a situation where I was seeing if there was any more opportunities out there. So I spoke to him on a personal level. He was honest with me and said what he said, and that was that. If a couple of weeks had went by, possibly I could have been at Dundee. You'll never know, but I was delighted when Dundee United came in and gave me the option to go there.
Yeah. So, why did you not stay? Stay at St Johnston. Or what went down there?
Well, I mean, I think I've already said quite a bit in the press about the situation that happened. I was offered a contract that I didn't feel was acceptable, and that was it. I mean, that was the only reason that I left. So all aside, I mean, these things happen in football where you can't come to an agreement with a club. I couldn't come to an agreement with a club, and I moved on, and they've moved on as well. So that was pretty much it.
Looking at Dundee United's squad just now, I mean, there certainly looks like there is a squad built there that, if they go for the title this season and they get back up to the Premiership, they seem to have the core of a squad there that could quite conceivably be the next 3, 4, 5 years. Did you get that impression when you're speaking with the manager that he was kind of looking to build something longer term, or was it everything kind of geared just now towards we'll get back to the Premiership and then we'll look at where we go from there?
I think first and foremost he was looking at doing the job that's put in front of him, and which is to get out of the league that we're currently sitting and get back to the Premier League, which is the ultimate goal. But I think you've seen with the signings that he's made, he's signed good pros that have played at big clubs. Billy King came from Hearts, Keatsy came for Hibs. He was also at Hearts. Billy had a spell at Rangers. He was at Inverness. He's got SPL experience. So I think he's trying to add a bit of experience to his squad. And I mean, these boys are still really young. They're 23, 24, 25-year-old. So they've got the opportunity to be there if they do well for the next 5, 6, 7 years, and hopefully be successful with the club. And I think you're totally right. I think probably in the back of the manager's mind, he'll be thinking about once, obviously, hopefully we get back into the Premier League, then we'll just add to what he's looking to bring in. I think he said that he's still looking to bring in a couple of more players for this season, and then he'll just take it from there. So everything was very positive what the manager and the club are trying to do at Dundee United, and hopefully it's a success while I'm there.
Yeah, well, the very best for your time at Dundee United, because, they deserve to be in the Premiership. Top 6, even top 4 is what they really deserve for their place. But as you said, a wee while back, you had some stories from your European tour or your European nights against the teams.
Yeah, I mean we had some great European trips. The main one that stands out that all the St Johnstone fans talk about is the trip to Lucerne. We had got a decent result over there. We went back to the hotel, and the manager had said that we could have a couple of beers just to relax and unwind. So we sat down, had our evening meal, had a couple of beers, and then somebody had a bright idea of deciding to go out for a couple of more beers. So I think that was Stephen McLean or Fraser Wright. One of the two of them decided they were going out. So we decided to sneak out 1v1. Hotel, managed to get outside. We saw a man in the middle of the street digging a pothole. We tapped him on the shoulder and and asked him to take us to the local pub for a beer. So about 12 of us jumped in the back of his white transit van with all his work stuff in it. He drove down. We had said, listen lads, a couple of quiet beers and we'll get away up the road. And just as we slid the door open, where the entertainers there was like 300 St Johnstone fans and the directors and the chairman. So we were caught red-handed, but we thought, nah, in for a penny, in for a pound, we're going to go anyway. So we had an unbelievable night with the fans. They still speak about it to this day. It was just a bit disappointing that the flight was like 5:45 the next morning and I was still sleeping at 5 o'clock. I think they were going to miss the flight. I had to get pretty much carried into the bus and put in the seat to make sure that I made the flight. I think the manager had pretty much told the other players that I had 5 minutes to get on the bus or I was getting left in Lucerne. And ultimately, we got back and he found us all for going out, but it was worth the fine. I mean, I think if you spoke to any of the boys that were on that squad about the Lucerne trip and even the fans that were there, it was an unbelievable night out that we had with the fans, and I got fined and all the boys got fined, and it was worth it. It was a night to remember, as I'll say.
Yeah, well, it seems like a good night, that type of night. But, well, is there any, dressing room stories where, like, say, a manager, gave a player, like a Ferguson style treatment?
Aye, I've had that a few times.
Ooh.
I got to Tommy Wright at Hibs one game. Slaughtered me. And all I done was shake my head. And he said, stop it. And I just kept shaking my head. So he volleyed the physio table and pretty much flipped it over. And I'm still there shaking my head and Big Fraser Wright saying, stop it, Scobbs, stop it. So eventually I stopped it. But funnily enough, the manager decided to pick the table back up, and every towel that fell off decided to start folding it back into place properly and put it back on the table. Almost like he had OCD. It was funny as anything. I had to have a chat. After the game, we came in, we were doing the 10 men, and we managed to draw nothing each, and I came in and I just laughed, and he started laughing as well. But, I mean, I've had a few. Yogi used to be quite intense.
Yeah.
Stephen Presley once at Falkirk came in after a game and ran and tried to kick the big ice bucket we had, but he didn't realise the ice bucket was open. So as he's kicked the ice bucket, all the ices fell out, and you know what Elvis is like. He's got like the brun leather shoes, nice tight fitted trousers. He's kicked this ice bucket, went about 10 feet in the air and landed on his back and got a slit for the front of his trousers all the way around to his back. Well, I'm rolling in stitches. And he couldn't even do his team talk. He just had to leave literally within 5 seconds of getting up, and we were all rolling about the changing room laughing. But no, I've had a few, but in hindsight, you've got to just laugh them off, I suppose.
Yeah, well... Yeah, because, at Celtic, there have been a couple of funny ones, which I've heard of. Like, James Forrest was left covered in fruit and stuff like that, like bananas and just a lot of rubbish after Neil Lennon volleyed a fruit bowl at him, funnily enough. So what else? Well, like there must be some like really funny thing or funny story which just sticks out.
Who, for me?
Yeah.
Well, there was this one trip at Falkirk. We used to go to Holland every year.
Yeah.
We went to this wee tiny place where there was like no cars, so you had to cycle everywhere. So like on the last night we had played a game, we decided to go for a night out. So as you do, we'll go down to the local, have a few beers, but they ran out of beer. Ooh. But he told us about a bus that take you to a nightclub in the middle of a field. So we just like, yeah, let's crack on. So all the senior boys were there. I was coming through Scott Arfield, Chris Mitchell was coming through. He goes to this nightclub, and so we're there drinking and just cracking on and having a good time. And next minute we got a shout to go outside. There was like police and that there, so we goes outside. Only to see Chris Mitchell decided he wanted to start doing handstands on this car outside the nightclub. And it turns out that the car was the owner of the nightclub's car, and he had dented it on. He was jumping a bit on top of it. So we're all like, "Oh no, what's going on here?" So they phoned the hotel we were staying at to get a hold of John Hughes. So he had to get the manager of the hotel to drive him down with Ross Wilson, who was working at a club at the time. So as they came down to the police station, the policeman's decided to breathalyse the manager of the hotel when he's actually failed his alcohol test, so he's been through in the cells as well.
Wow.
And, so Yogi's like had to get a taxi with Roscoe, and Chris Mitchell was just sitting in the middle with his head in his hands. Oh man! The next day morning at breakfast, not a word was spoken. It was intense as anything. We got 10 out at 6 in the morning. Got made to do laps of the pitch. Everybody was in stitches once Mitch had told us the story. They sat there just in the middle, but the fact that the manager of the hotel got done with drink driving, he's got his licence suspended and everything, all because Mitch decided to jump on top of a car.
That sounds like an absolute horror story for the hotel manager. Wow.
Funnily enough, I think that was the last year we went back there.
Yeah, I don't think you would have been welcomed back. I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
So, well, where did you go after that, or was that the time you left into St Johnstone?
No, that was roughly right in the middle. I mean, once Yogi had left and went to Hibs, obviously Eddie May came in and took over at Falkirk, and it didn't work out. And then obviously Elvis had a stint. It was just, I think I had a year with Elvis, and then I left and went to St Johnstone. So
did Tommy Wright do any like funny stuff in the changing room, like any shouting, swearing, stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't think it had to do. It never had to do much because we had a senior squad. His nickname was the boy Bunting, the darts player.
Aye.
Yeah.
That was his nickname in the darts room because he threw like him and looked like him, and he used to try and get a wee bit of stick out to the boys that we were all players and that. But he was definitely Bunting anyway. But no, he was a great character. I mean, he's quite a funny guy as well, and he likes to have a laugh in that, but he can be serious, but nothing too over the top. I think he knows the guys. He knew the guys that were there anyway at the time, done a job for him. But nah, he was good at times.
Tommy's somebody that seems to have a really growing reputation in Scottish football. Do you think he's somebody that before long is kind of destined to move to bigger and better things, or can you see him sticking at St Johnstone to kind of carry on what he's been doing there?
I'm really surprised he hasn't got his move already, to be honest. I mean, if you look at his record, he's made top 6 every year he's been there. He's got in Europe 3 times. He's won the Scottish Cup. I mean, apart from winning the league, what more can he actually do at St Johnstone for a bigger club to come calling? And I don't know what it is that for some reason they don't find him attractive enough. But I listened to a couple of people on the TV talk and try to say, oh, it's because he was a goalkeeper and because he's getting older. I mean, the man's success at St Johnstone is unbelievable. I mean, it's literally a golden era for St Johnstone Football Club, and he's at the helm. I do not know why a bigger club has not come calling for Tommy Wright, and I think it will be soon. And I think, it might not be an actual club that comes calling. I think the opportunity will be there if Mike O'Neill decides to ever leave Northern Ireland, that Tommy Wright will be the next Northern Ireland manager.
I think that's probably a fair shout. I mean, looking at the types of names that would be in the reckoning for that, it would be hard to see past Tommy Wright, barring some extraordinary foreign candidate appearing out of nowhere. he would
Yeah,
be the obvious choice there.
of course, and you've got to remember he was also Michael's number 2 assistant manager or goalkeeper. So he's been in there. He's worked with these players there. So I think, if Michael were to get a big job, which I think it would take a big job to take him away from Northern Ireland, then I think Tommy's name would be right at the top of the list. But I mean, you see jobs coming up down south, and it's the same old managers that are on the merry-go-round, that get mentioned, and then you look down the list and you've got Tommy Wright sitting there at like 40 or 50 to 1 for the job, and you're thinking, he for what he's done at St Johnstone, he should be top of that list, getting interviews at pretty much a lot of jobs that come down south. But for some reason, it's not happening for him. But I don't think it'll be too long before a big club comes calling. I think St Johnstone might find it difficult to hang on to him.
You even seen it when Derek McInnes was in talks to Sunderland. They started bringing up names as to who might replace McInnes up at Pittodrie.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy's name wasn't the one it was mentioned once or twice, but it wasn't one of the ones that people going, this guy's the shoe in here. And it didn't really make any sense to me, just given that, as you say about success at St Johnstone, he's worked with the international player in Northern Ireland. He's not put a foot wrong since he came to Scotland. And there, what you would arguably say, if no the next biggest job in the country after the Old Firm, it's one of. And he could barely get a mention. It was crazy. I even seen people mention the likes of getting Craig Brown out of retirement.
I know, and Alex Neil as well. I think he was probably the Alex Neil. I think he was the favourite, and I was the same. I was saying surely if Derek decides to go Sunderland, Tommy's got to be up there with an interview in that as well. Like, because I mean, a club like Aberdeen, they like a bit of stability. I mean, Derek's been there for a couple of years. Tommy's obviously had a good stability at St Johnstone. He's been successful at St Johnstone on a budget compared to Aberdeen's budget as a shoestring. I think he's been shrewd with some of this the signings that he's made. So, I mean, I think if he was to be given more of a budget and more licence at a bigger club, then he would progress it. And as I say, I hope he does get the opportunity, because he's actually a really nice man who works his absolute socks off to be successful. I mean, it's, he's day in, day out, he's trying to make things better at the club and trying to be successful, and year in, year out, he keeps performing with the players to be successful. And as I say, it surely can only be a matter of time before he gets the knock at the door.
Kind of looking across, like, just all the different managers you've worked under in your career, you seem to have kind of had a little bit of everything. You've had somebody like Yogi that was very much a kind of man-manager type. You've had Stephen Presley, who at least comes across as a bit more methodical, a bit more thought out in his processes as to how he does things. You've got Tommy Wright, who, to unintended purposes, has got the magic touch. Do you think that kind of, as you're getting on with your career now, you're kind of picking up these things that has happened in the past under different guys? You're going, I can see now why, say, Yogi bollocked me for this, or Elvis brought this method into training, and it's to kind of how it's benefited the club and the players both.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was at Falkirk at a very young age, Yogi Hughes kept saying to me, "You need to do your coaching badges. You need to do your coaching badges." And I was a young kid, like, Yogi, I'll get them done. But now that I'm into, like, I'm 29 now, that's definitely something that I'm wanting to do when I'm older. And as you've said, working under these managers, you will pick up things that they used to do, and the way their training is, and how they set out their teams, and what they do behind the scenes, and that. And as you say, I've worked with a number of managers where their approaches have been different, and I think it's just about taking bits and bobs from each manager and trying to curb your own, way of doing things. And as you've said, I've had Yogi, who was probably the best man manager I've worked with. I've had Tommy Wright, who leaves no stone unturned. I mean, he demands of players, the absolute best, because he gives the absolute best in his, in everything that he does to get them prepared for games. As you say, Elvis loved a stat. Elvis loved watching the game and then looking at the stats and see who ran where, and who done what, and touches of the ball and stuff like that. And I think it's just kind of putting all of them things together and then working your own way out about how you want to be a coach. I mean, something for me that I'm looking to do next year is I want to go and learn Spanish. I think that's part of the coaching protocol now. You have to not be fluent in a foreign language, but you have to be able to take instructions. And I've looked into doing some Spanish classes when I'm 30 and get my coaching badges started, and hopefully, in the future I'll have the opportunity to be a manager.
Well, yeah, because you would want to know different languages for the manager, could sign completely different people, and would help those different people to settle in. Well, if it's got somebody there that could translate for them until they learn the language.
I mean, you just look at someone like, what was his name? The Portuguese fellow that was at Falkirk, Pedro Moutinho.
Pedro Moutinho, aye.
I mean, you just look at him, he came over here, and as far as I know, he's still with Boness United. And so he's come over here and he's kind of fell in love with the whole place. And it just shows that something, you're getting guys that come over here, and you see foreign guys come into Scotland a lot that they come over, they do a couple of years and they vanish off to wherever they go. But you get some guys that will come over and it's maybe just been the group he came into and the kind of the area he was in, the people that he was with. He came to Scotland, they went away, he's come. I think he had maybe 2 spells at Falkirk.
I think he had 4.
Did he? God, I knew he had a couple.
Every year, man, he kept showing up to pre-season. You're like, all right, Pedro, you back again? And then, I'm not signing. And then, he's got a 6-month deal.
Some boy.
He was a good player, huh?
Yeah, we had, to be fair, we had a lot of decent players come in. We had Vitor Limor as well. We had a centre half called Tiago, who was a bit crazy but done a job. I mean, some of the boys that he brought over, and Yogi was smart as well. He didn't just bring one Portuguese player over, he brought 2 or 3 so that they came in a crowd and their families stayed close to each other. And that Russell was there, so he helped them. And that's the thing with a manager as well. I think you need to understand. I mean, the big one I see is Ian Cathro. I mean, the last game I played against him, he was speaking to Goncalves in Spanish or Portuguese or whatever it was, and I think that's totally beneficial for a manager and for players as well if you're able to speak 1 or 2 languages.
Definitely. It's certainly something that, as you say, when you bring foreign guys across, even if it's just as simple as being somewhat conversational in Spanish or French or Portuguese or whatever, you can bring these guys in, and while they might know, their English might not be great and your Spanish might not be great, if you can get the bones of it across to them, that's exactly it. You get the basics across to what you're trying to put across to them, it can help much more. And I think too, if for the club's perspective, you've got managers or coaches or even players that have kind of shown that gumption to learn another language, it makes the player feel that wee bit more valued as well. They're not coming into a new environment and they're having to make all the adjustments.
Yeah, because I mean, how many times does a player come in and then the players then got to go and learn the local language because this is where he's came? Wouldn't it be easier if you had someone there that spoke the language, but he could also pick up the language as he progressed through the season and he would get to know terms and such? I think it's a two-way. It's a two-way thing, really. I don't think it should be just down to the player that's coming to the club to make sure that he can understand exactly what's going on. I think it should be down to the club to make sure that the player understands as well from the club that they're going to do everything to help his stay. Because I mean, it can only be beneficial. I mean, there'd be nothing worse. I mean, if I went to a foreign country and the manager's screaming instructions, and then there's an interpreter next to him screaming instructions, and then I scream something back to the interpreter, and then he screams it to the manager. I mean, it swings and roundabouts. You really need it. You really need to have it for A to B, and as you say, it's something that your coaching badges are now actually bringing in. I spoke to a lot of guys in that are there, and they have to do a little piece in a foreign language and try and be a little bit fluent. So I think it's great.
Definitely. Certainly. If anything, it's just a wee bit more professional.
Yeah.
So well, John Hughes, he seems a scary. I'm emphasising scary person.
Yes, scary.
I've only spoke to him like a couple of times, and then that was when I was down at Rafe. Right?
Yeah.
And geez, he seemed scary. Like he was shouting at players and that. I mean, no. Like I could only imagine, well, that was how he was like in Falkirk.
I remember at one point I had an apprenticeship with Falkirk Council, and they took a handful of us down to Little Kerf to do it. It's like a rudimentary coaching it was with Tam Elliott.
Aye, Tam Elliott.
A brilliant fella. But we were doing this kind of coaching and stuff, and you'd kind of see the players and the coaching staff kind of coming and going, and Yogi would come over, and this day he'd come in and we'd see him pull into the car park, and had a wee Hibs air freshener in his car, and I think he might have had a Hibs Reggie plate as well. I might be wrong. Aye, I thought he did. But I remember the Hibs air freshener, and one of the boys that was there, he was a Falkirk fan, and kind of called him out and going, "What you got a Hibs air freshener for, Yogi?" And that was it. I've never seen somebody take a bollocking of a complete stranger quite like that in my life. It was fantastic. The boy never uttered a peep again at the time we were there.
No, honestly, it was funny though when he got angry. His veins and that caught me his head, and he'd be like, "Yogi, you need to calm down, huh?" Like everything was really intense in that. But to be fair, a lot of people said they were quite intimidated by him. But once you actually sat down and spoke to him, he's actually quite a soft guy inside. He was very compassionate to, a lot of the guys. We had a couple of situations that happened at Falkirk at Little Kerf and that, and the way he handled that was exceptional. And so he might have this big hard man exterior that he got for his playing days, but he had a side to him as well where he would put his arm around you and help you. And I think that's what made him, an unbelievable man manager.
I always got the impression as well, and it's maybe doing Yogi a disservice here, but I've mentioned earlier about when Hughes would come into Greensmith Complex and do stuff in the hall. And I must have been 17 at the time, so I kind of just try and peer in and just see what's going on. And as much as you'd see Yogi G and everybody up, I always got the impression that Brian Rice was not the brains behind the operation, but he was a bad cop to Yogi's good cop.
Aye, Chipper was the one that predominantly set training up and took training. But the both of them were just like a double act.
Aye.
It was almost like chalk and cheese because Chipper never really got that angry at times. It did with young boys, Chipper. He got angry at young boys and that, but when you were in the first team and that, he wasn't one of these ones that would stand and scream and shout and all that, whereas Yogi would probably be the opposite, where he's the one that would do all the shouting. So they worked. I mean, their partnership together was unbelievable, and the training they put on was great, and everybody enjoyed it. And I think you need that. I think you almost need a counterbalance with your number two. Whether you're a coach where you didn't really want to run the riot act, it would be good if you could say a few words, and went out, but then your number two read the riot act, or vice versa. You read the riot act, and your number two will be the one that would speak to the players and calm it down a bit. So, it's just about characters, and they two fitted really well together.
Yeah, and then, we've not spoke about your Scotland experience, because you've played for the youth teams there, the under 19 and also the under 21 team. So,
yeah.
How was that then? Well, for like the whole experience.
Oh, it was great. I think first and foremost, it was great to be involved because I was a kid playing at Falkirk. So back then it was literally a lot of Rangers and Celtic players that, even though they probably weren't playing the first team, they were getting in the squads week in, week out. But then it kind of came a stage where you seen like some Dundee players getting involved. Kevin McDonald for Dundee, myself, Scott Arfield, Chris Mitchell for Falkirk, Chris Maguire for Aberdeen. You seen it kind of turn the tables a little bit where guys that were playing first team football at smaller clubs compared to Rangers and Celtic were getting the opportunity, and I loved every minute of it. And some of the trips and games that we had were brilliant, and just to be a part of it and that, standing there singing the national anthem for your country, it's a great experience that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do. I mean, I'm probably still only at 21's level on that, but it was something that I thoroughly enjoyed. And to be fair, a lot of the guys that I played with in the 19s and the 21s, even though we only played a number of games with each other, I still keep in touch with quite regularly as much as possible, because it's something that you've went through together and experienced, and something that you're never really going to forget.
Yeah, well, it would be hard to forget, such a joyous and proud moment, such as, playing for your country, at any degree. But was there any, stories like such as the John Hughes ones and, dressing room stories?
No, I mean, I think it's difficult. It's a bit more laid back at that level, because obviously you're there playing for Scotland. You're not actually contracted to them, so it's actually a difficult one for the manager to manage, because I mean, how far do you go with players? Do you treat them as you're their first team coach at their club, or do you ease back a little bit? I mean, when I was in, we had Archie Knox, who was the manager of the 21s just when I broke into it. He was great. He knew what to say to players. Obviously, had been there and done it at Rangers with Walter Smith and that, and just to actually play for him and that. This icon pretty much of Scottish football and of Rangers especially. That was great. So I mean, changing rooms kind of differed along with training. Training was different as well. It was more toned down. It was more geared to less injuries and not doing too much and just leading up to games. Whereas training for your first team, you would go out and train as hard as you could for the 4 or 5 days leading up to the game. But it was a great experience that I'm pretty sure everybody involved would have thoroughly enjoyed.
I mean, do you think it helped going into the Scotland squads having guys that you're familiar with club level? So like you guys like Chris Mitchell, Scott Arfield, do you think that helped you just to go into a squad with guys that you maybe only knew from playing against, and you didn't really have like your club mates that you're away every day? You're in the training ground, you're in the stadium, whatever else, so you know these guys fairly intimately. But when you go with the international squad, it's guys that you've maybe never really interacted too much with. So do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, the fact that we had 3 or 4 boys that were involved, and as you say, it is quite daunting going into a squad, especially for your first time being called up for the squad. That's going to be an experience, and there's nothing worse than going down for lunch and you're looking about where to sit and who to speak to and that. But I don't think there was a problem. I don't think that's as big a problem in Scotland as it might be elsewhere with other countries. I think to be fair, in the most part, we're quite a humble nation. I think we're quite humble as in players that were involved in the squad that I was involved with. There wasn't really anybody that thought they were better than what they were or stuff like that. Everybody was quite grounded, and as I say, you've got guys like Archie Knox that would, once you go out of the line, he just put you right back in your place. So he made sure that everybody was involved with everybody. But it was good to have Scott and Chris and that there just to kind of feed off and have a laugh when you go back to the room and that. But the rest of the boys that were there that you probably wouldn't have met at all through football, I thoroughly got on with them, and whenever you see each other now and then, you'll sit and have a chat and that and talk about some of the stories about when we went away trips and that with Scotland and how we enjoyed it.
Was there any nights out in the Scotland teams, such as the St Johnstone ones?
No, that kind of got turned on its head once the first team, the Fergie and McGregor and thing and that kind of happened in the first team. It literally fed its way for the first team right down to the 19s levels, 21s levels. So when we were in there, it was kind of at a stage where once you had finished a game, they would sit you in a room and say, right, you can have 2 beers and that's you're away to your bed. So you never really got the opportunity to go out and have a good time. And to be fair, most of the boys probably wouldn't have went out because it was such an honour to play for your country, then you didn't want to kind of mess it up or ruin it. Or I mean, there'd be nothing worse if you got phoned and told you weren't in the next squad because you had went out for a beer and got drunk and that. So, there wasn't too much. And as I say, once it kind of kicked off with the first team squad and there was all that happened, it really got nailed in the bud, and pretty much it was probably a 2 half pints of beer, and that was you. You were allowed to go to your bed, and that was that.
So, one question. Right, so what is your best, who is your best 11 on the players you have played with?
I mean, you texted me earlier, so I was hard looking back, trying to find players, man. I was having to Google way back to like 2006 and all that. But I've got a team anyway that I thought if I've missed anybody out, then they'll phone me anyway. But I've got a team anyway. So in goals, I've gone for Kasper Schmeichel.
Oh yeah.
He came on loan to Falkirk.
Yeah.
For a season, he was great. We had a lot of good goalies to be fair. We had Tim Krul as well, who was at Newcastle.
I went to Falkirk,
But Kasper for me was just like one of those. He had a wee bit of arrogance about him, Kasper. He knew he was a good goalkeeper. I don't know if he had a wee bit of arrogance because of who his father was, but he had a kind of swagger about him, as if to say, like, I'm going to be a good goalkeeper. And I mean, it's shown. I mean, there's talk of him now going to Manchester United, so he's done something right. He's won the Premier League with Leicester and done brilliant. So he's definitely got to be my goalkeeper anyway.
Okay. And what is your formation?
I've just went for the standard 4. Oh, well, wait now. I'm just going to go for a 4-4-2, but there's a wee guy that's going to like slip in at the hole for centre mid.
Alright, okay.
So at right back, I've got Jackie McNamara.
Oh, yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he came for a season and a bit at Falkirk. He was great. And obviously, a number of years at Celtic, playing at the highest level. At centre half, I've gone for current St Johnstone player Stephen Anderson. He is your out and out defender. If you wanted a guy to be a defender, then he is your man. He absolutely loves defending, and he's like the durest guy in the world, man. But he just loves defending. So he's definitely got it in there. Next to him, I'm going to play him slightly out of position. I'm going to put Dave Mackay, who's now the starting Albion manager. He was right back for me when I was at St Johnstone, but he also played in centre half. He should have got a Scotland cap in his career, in my opinion, but never. But he was a great guy. At left back, I went for Callum Davidson. I don't think I need to say too much. I mean, the man played in the Premier League for Blackburn, Leicester, played for Preston. He's played for Scotland numerous times. He was a really good player, and he still showed it even at his later stages his career when I met up with him at St Johnstone. My midfield 4, starting on the right hand side, will be Danny Swanson.
Yeah.
He is technically one of the best players I've played with. I think he gets the fans on the edge of their seat once he picks the ball up. I think Hibs fans are going to be delighted to see him in the green jersey this year. I think he's he's going to do really well for them. He's just one of these players that just loves to run and dribble with the ball and try things, and I mean, he's no scared to make mistakes. So he's in there. Next to him in centre midfield, I'm going to have Scott Arfield. I think he speaks for himself. I mean, he's played week in, week out in the Premier League. He's had a fantastic career, which I'm sure he'll continue to do, and he's a very good friend of mine, so he had to go in. Next to him, I'm going to put the best player that I've ever played with in my career, and that is Russell Latapet.
Could I put my house on that one?
That guy is an absolute genius. I swear to God. He is. He actually used to do a training drill at Falkirk where he would have like a box. He'd get Yogi to mark a box out, and he would get like 20 of the young lads, and he would have a minute to get the ball off him. And if you got the ball off him, he would give you a week's wages. And he went through it for 20 minutes. Every single boy got 1 minute in this box, which was probably 6 or 7 feet each way. Nobody got the ball off him once. For 20 minutes, all he kept the ball off every single person one-on-one. It was just a joy to play with. I mean, some of the things they saw on a football pitch and done left and right foot was things that you could only dream of. And it was just a great guy as well. Just to have in the changing room, just so laid back, just loved life. I think everybody knows that he enjoyed his lifestyle outside of football, but it was never detrimental to whenever he played. And you know, he probably one of Falkirk's greatest ever players, to be honest, like in my opinion. Next to him on the left hand side, I've got Neil McCann. He came to Falkirk at the same time as Jackie McNamara. We actually had a decent season. Managed to stay in the league and go to the Scottish Cup final where Neil had a crossbar a couple of times against Rangers.
Oh yeah.
That was a game that Chinovo scored for about 45 yards. Minded, for a throw, and he just shelled it out of the goalie's head. In fact, Chris Boyd came off that game at half time because it was too hot.
Too hot, aye.
It was like 40 odd degrees at pitch side.
40 degrees in Scotland. Whoa.
Aye. Oh God, aye.
It was something stupid at pitch side. It was needing oxygen when we were walking up a tunnel. Honestly, it was hyperventilating. But Neil McCann, I mean, Hearts fans, Rangers fans will know about Neil. I mean, he was just one of these wingers that love to get the byline and get crosses in the box, and you know, he put numerous balls in the box for Falkirk. He actually set up my goal in the semi-final against Dunfermline from across, so he's definitely in there. My two up tops are going to be Anthony Stokes, who, when he came to Falkirk, he just lit the SPL up. I mean, I think he scored 3 hat-tricks in 3 weeks one season. A young kid at 17-year-old just came up here with so much desire to play and score goals, and he did that in abundance. And you know, he got his move to Sunderland, albeit that didn't work out.
And then Celtic.
And then Celtic, yeah. And, you know, I think possibly he's talking. I'm trying to maybe get a move to Hibs, so we'll see how that one pans out. But he was a great player. He was a good finisher as well. And the one next to him will be Stephen McLean at St Johnstone, who, for me, as a target man, he's not the biggest in the world. He's probably not the strongest, but what he will do is he will hold that ball up for you night and day. He's so comfortable when the ball's fired into him, you know, just taking it with some guys on his back. He pretty much links St Johnstone as a whole. You would probably think it would be like a centre midfield, but it's not. It's Stephen McLean that links everybody up. You know, he brings guys into play. Everybody that plays with him says that he's great to play with. And he's another one of my mates, so I had to put him in there. But he's definitely in there as well. He's a top class player.
Yeah, and how about your captain?
Captain will have to be Dave Cuptie Mackay.
Cuptie.
Right, I cut tie him. I need to ask actually, did you never enjoy one of Russell's famous nights out in Rosie's?
Well, there has been a few. You know what they used to do? Russell and the Portuguese used to go to a restaurant in Falkirk, right? And you know what women are like, yeah? So women would obviously all go to the toilet at the same time.
Aye.
So see when the three wives went to the toilet, they three would like come out the restaurant and run up to Rosie's nightclub and hide in the corner. So
Fantastic.
I'd be in the nightclub with like Liam Craig and Patrick Craig and that, and we would get a tap on the shoulder for Russell's missus. Scobbs, have you seen Russell in that? And I'm like, nah, I don't know where Russell in that is. I don't think he's in here then. And you would see the three women walking about Rosie's trying to find him. And you look over in the corner and him, Pedro and Vito would be absolutely chuckling to each other in the corner, and their missus ended up just going, hey man. It was the funniest. They used to do it every week. And I don't know how they got away with it and managed to like make it up to their missus, but they'd done it every week. But no, he was brilliant, Russell. He was, as everybody knows, he liked a good night out.
Oh God, I mind we met him and Dwight York in Rosie's one night.
Aye, I was there.
And you're just stood like, why's Dwight York and Rosie's? This isn't right.
He paid. He went when we were walking to Rosie's. He had a big wad of cash in his hand, and he gave it to the bouncer and says, "You'll come with me." So the bouncer followed him about all night,
Brilliant.
just to make sure nothing happened. Because Russell, we were in Durham one year for pre-season, and Russell went and met him in Newcastle, and then we couldn't find Russell the next day morning when we were trying to come here.
And then he would read Big Dwight.
No, he went and met Dwight. We went out in Durham, and he went to Newcastle.
Unreal.
In fact, one year in Portugal, we went out to a Brazilian restaurant. Russell had taken us, and a guy came over and sat down with this hat on. And I think he kind of sat between Russell and the manager, Yogi, at the time, and Yogi was like, "Oh, what you doing? What you sitting there for? Get out my seat," thinking it was a random person. And the boy whipped his hat off, and it turned out it was Deco. You know the boy who used to play with Barcelona?
Aye.
He had spoke to Russell, and Russell said he was in the area, so he came in and had a couple of beers with Russell and the manager. Yogi was like starstruck. Russell had obviously played with him when he was at Porto and that, so he came over for a couple of beers and that. All the boys were just sitting there starstruck.
I'm no half.
Who is this?
Aye.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, like if I was about to meet like a footballer, like. No, because you think, because you're footballers yourself, like you wouldn't be starstruck, but like in the same way, like they are still like idols to you, because like they're the world's best.
Mm.
Yeah, like so. Speaking of idols, then who was yours growing up?
I love Brian Loudropper.
Brian Loudrop. Yeah,
I loved him. I mean, I was kind of brought up as like a Falkirk fan, but my dad and my uncle were massive Rangers fans. You know, they used to watch every games. I went to a few games with my uncle. I went to some of the European games, which were unbelievable. And just the team that they had at that time, was. Yeah. And for me, he was on a different level. To be fair, he was like unbelievable.
Yeah. It may have been a bit of cheating, but you know we'll skim past. Nah, I'm joking. Rangers didn't cheat. Right? They just played. They played the system. Hands up to them. They played the system. Right.
I was half expecting to see something like Richard Cadetti there.
Yeah.
No.
Like I was expecting to say a centre back. So like to
be fair, I wasn't actually a centre half or defender until I was 16.
Yeah, so
I wasn't. There was a guy at Falkirk called Richard Fox who decided to turn me into a defender.
Yeah, that's like what most footballers do. Well, like
I
they start off
like
mid. Somewhere else, yeah. Well, maybe, if you were playing centre mid, you could have ended up at some DDW team down in the Lowland League or Highland League or something, but you're living the high life Dundee United.
No, I wasn't quick enough. To play centre mid. I think that's what the boy tried to say to me at 16, but in a polite way. I think you'll do well at centre half. Scobbs. Really, I was thinking, you're too slow to play centre mid.
You play full ball. You don't always play full back, but that's like where you mostly play.
Yeah, no, I played to be fair.
Were you like a defensive one? Or are you?
Sorry?
Are you like a defensive one?
No, to be at Falkirk, people probably know Falkirk used to play football from the back out, and Yogi liked his full backs to get forward. So when I was playing at Falkirk come through, I used to try and get in the box as much as possible.
You were like a Carlos or Roberto Carlos.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
You're a wing back.
Some really good stuff under Yogi. He really did seem to like setting his teams up. Alright, they maybe were not going to win every game the way it was set up, but he'd rather go down 5-4 than go down 1-0.
Yeah, I think sometimes after games he was more disappointed if like we came off and hadn't played as well as we could have and won a game rather than played brilliant and got beat, which was quite strange in a way. But I mean, if you had come off at the end of the game and been beat 2-1 but played the way he wanted you to play and pretty much battered the team but just hadn't got the breaks, you know, he was happy with that, as long as you played the way that he wanted you to play. And 9 times out of 10, you know, I came off for a club like Falkirk in the Premier League. So, I mean, no, he was definitely one of the guys that wanted to get it done and pass it as much as possible, which he's also continued doing when he went to Hibs and Inverness and such. So, you know, that's his philosophy.
So, but now you're at there at United. So, how's the first couple of training sessions been? Because you said you had a double one today. You had a double session.
I mean, it's been tough, but you expect that. I mean, this is my 13th pre-season, so I'm pretty used to, you know, the kind of goings on. But obviously, when you go into a new club, you want to make sure you're going in the best shape possible. And I've done a lot of work over the summer to make sure that I was there or thereabouts. And I mean, for the minute I walked in, all the boys have been fantastic. All the new signings that are there, everybody seems to have gelled really well. We played our first game the other night, which we won 3-0. So the sessions have been tough, but it's nothing that you wouldn't expect. I mean, you know, they push you as much as they can, but you know, not that far where it's unbearable and going to break you, and they give you time off when you need time off. So it's been good. We've got a couple of games this weekend. We've got a game Friday and a game Sunday leading into the first cup game against Wraith Rovers, which is a week on Saturday, and it's all hands to the pump. And I think now we're at the stage where we've done pretty much the majority of our running. It's now down to, you know, how he's wanting to play and getting the team set up and stuff like that. And but I think we'll be doing that in the next couple of games, which will be fantastic to finally do, and look forward to the season coming up.
Yeah, well, what are your expectations like for it? Like to win the league and go up, or just get there? Via playoff.
No, I think first and foremost, promotion's got to be our aim. For a club like Dundee United, as we've said, have been successful in the past. They really should be back in the SPL, but you know, it's down to the players and the manager to get that done. We're putting a squad together that the manager believes is going to go and make that happen, whether it be promotion or winning the league. You know, preferably it would be winning the league, which I'm sure most of the guys would say. We know it's going to be difficult, but you know, he's signed players that he thinks has got the experience and the level of ability to go and do that. And I mean, I wouldn't have came to a club like Dundee United if I didn't think that we were going to be successful, and the stuff that the manager and the club were saying to me was exactly along the lines of what I was thinking. So definitely we need to get ourselves back in the Premier League.
Yeah, and then after that, and then whenever you retire, and then what are you thinking then? Coaching, a manager job?
Yeah, I'd like to get into coaching. I said earlier on that, you know, next year, next year, I'm going to start doing my badges and stuff like that, and it's something that I'd be very passionate about doing, you know, and hopefully I get the opportunity to do that. I know it's very difficult to break into management as such, but you know, it's something that I've always wanted to do for a very, very young age. And so that would be the next step for me, and whether that be starting off as a coach or or a youth coach or an assistant manager or whatnot, you know, that's something that you probably have to do first before you be a fully fledged manager. You know, I think you see a lot of that. Callum Davidson's doing it right now with Tommy Wright. I'm sure Callum in a few years to come might fancy going himself, and you know, the fact that he's done 4 or 5 years as a number 2, it gives him that wee bit of extra knowledge before he actually steps into a full-time job himself. So, you know, hopefully that's an opportunity for myself. But as I say, it's difficult to guarantee it. So, you know, I might need to look at something else, which I'll do in the meantime. So, hopefully that's the way forward for me.
Yeah, well, would be good, well, to get back at, but well, not to get back into, but like to do coaching, and yeah, well, to like stay at your team, to stay at United and coach and build up your relationship, or even go back to your boyhood club and coach or manage there. But,
I mean, you'll be 30 in March, Tam. So, I mean, how much longer do you see yourself playing for? Do you see yourself still going the best part of another decade, or are you kind of one of these ones that sees yourself hanging your boots up quite early and then moving into coaching? Or
I think it'll come down really to, I mean, how your body reacts. I mean, every player that I speak to that has retired, they've always said that they wish they'd gave it one more year. So I think a lot of it's down to personal pride as well. Are you still able to perform at a decent level? Do you have to go, you know, to a club lower down the leagues? Have you still got that drive to pull yourself out of bed in the morning to go to training at a certain age? I think there's a lot of factors involved.
Well,
if there was an opportunity in the future, you know, to step into coaching, then that would be an opportunity that would be looked upon. But you know, as long as these old legs can keep up, then I'll hopefully play as long as I can before I take my next step. So, hopefully long may it continue.
yeah, well, would you be willing to go down into the further, or going down, well, like lower into the pyramid, like playing for like in Edinburgh City or Montrose or a team like that?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's difficult to say what's going to happen in the future. You know, as I say, it comes down sometimes to, you know, if you've played at a high level for the majority of your career, you might find it difficult going to play at a level that you're not used to as such. So, I mean, it would all come down to how I felt at that point in time. I mean, it might be a case at that stage where I would say, right, I'm fully going to focus on my coaching and hopefully pursue a line of work that way and just leave the football. But as you say, you never know in football. I mean, you know, you might end up going to Edinburgh City at a decent age and doing a player coaching role there at certain clubs. Offer that as well. So, I mean, the options are definitely there for you. It's just hopefully trying to choose the correct one for you. And once you do, then giving it everything you've got.
Yeah, well, you've seen that with Gary Kenneth. Like, he started at Dundee United, and now he's at, who's he at? He is at a lower league team, like proper lower league team, and he's only 30. And he is at.
I played with Gary Kenneth in the Scotland squads.
Yeah, like he left United in 2012, and now he's at Douglas Amateurs FC, and he used to actually play for Scotland, and he's only 30. So yeah,
it just shows you.
It just shows you. My dad always swore by Gary Kenneth. Always insisted he was going to be the next big thing in Scottish football. It just never quite happened for him.
Yeah, like it's a shame because like he was actually a good player, and I've got no idea how on earth he could end up at such a low team. But that was only because he took a risk and went down to Bristol Rovers. Well, as it goes for most players, that leave and go down to an English team. the majority of them flop, and it's not nice like to see them flop. And now he's at Douglas, so and he's won the Scottish Cup. I think I even dare to say he was the captain then. God.
He might have been actually.
Because
He was a good player, Gary Kenneth.
Yeah.
He was a good player. Like, I think he actually got a couple of bad injuries as well, which didn't help him. But a lot
That rings a bell.
You had an injury as well, didn't you? Like a pelvic injury or something.
I am a pubic bone.
Yeah. How was that bouncing back from that?
Oh, worst thing ever. It took me about 2.5 years.
Yeah. So then, well, how was it sustained?
More, it's just I think it was just an overload. Overload, and your pubic bone swells up.
Yeah.
And then we tried everything to get rid of it, but it just got to a stage where, for about a year and a half, I was taking injections every like 8 weeks. I was getting 2 injections into my pubic bone every 8 weeks just to keep playing. And it never settled. It wasn't until I actually taken like 3 months rest that I started to feel decent again. And eventually I went and saw a masseuse that I used to go and see in Edinburgh, and he pretty much worked me for about an hour and a half, and the next again day I woke up and the pain was gone, which was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, like it wouldn't be good, like pain. Well, or not pain, but like well, first of all, the pain, wouldn't be good, but the injury, like, would be bad, and then the mental injury, well, like for sustaining one, and well, the mental power or the willpower to get through like such an injury, and it took something like 18 months, I think. It took.
Aye.
Or something.
It took a very long time, but I was quite young, so I was playing for a manager who, I had ran through a brick wall for. So, I mean, there was no doubt that I was going to try and keep playing as long as possible. Not really thinking about the effects later on in my career. What could happen with taking these injections. I mean, obviously every time you have an injection, you're at risk of something. And for me to have injections every like 8 weeks to keep playing, which was totally my choice to do. Obviously, I was putting myself at risk, but these are kind of things you didn't think of as a young kid. But once you get older, you realise, and then you say to yourself, well, do I really want to push it and take that injection? What's the chances of me breaking down? What's the chances of this? But, I mean, I wouldn't change it. I mean, I actually played in the Scottish Cup final with Falkirk with that injury. So, I mean, if I hadn't been taking the injections, I wouldn't have been involved in the Scottish Cup final or that. So, I mean, in hindsight, I seen it as a correct decision. Yeah,
well, in the 40 degrees blistering heat, it could have been a lot worse. So yeah, well, how was it though in the Scottish Cup, like stepping out for your boyhood club against Rangers as well?
It was a bit surreal. Yogi had actually invited along Craig Gowan's father. Craig was the young lad who had the unfortunate accident at Little Kerse when we were only 16, 17 at the time, and sadly lost his life. But the club kept in contact with Craig's family, and he gave a quite emotional speech before the game, and Yogi invited him to walk us out. So we had his name engraved in our warm-ups at tops, which to this day I still have hanging in my wardrobe. It's something that I will never get rid of, because it felt like Craig was a part of that. So that added more to the emotional intensity of the game. And obviously playing against Rangers, who were flying at the time, we knew it was going to be difficult, and to come so close. I mean, we had them a few times. Like we we rattled them a few times the way we played, and I think at the end they were hanging on a wee bit, and we just ran out of time, and their luck didn't fall on the day. I mean, Nachanova scored a freak of a goal, which, I mean, he could have hit that 100 times, and 99 times it would have went out for a throw-in or a corner or a high kick, sorry. But on that day, he caught it perfect, and it landed in the net. So, I mean, it was really difficult to accept it after it, you know, the fact that we'd performed so well. But, I mean, we went back and we seen the fans, and they were so joyous and delighted that we'd managed to get a club like Falkirk to the Scottish Cup final. I mean, the week before, we literally played Inverness in the last game of the season, and we had to win to stay up. So, I mean, it showed you the difference in the two types of games. I mean, 1 week we played Inverness and we managed to scrape a 1-0 win. Danny Mallow, the goalkeeper at the time, had a save that, you know, I'll always remember. I mean, it was one of the best saves I've ever seen in the last couple of minutes to keep it 1-0 and for us to stay in the league. And then the next game week you're going away to Hamilton Park, the National Stadium, and play against Rangers Football Club in the, you know, obviously the biggest game in Scottish football. It was great to be a part of.
Yeah, and you mentioned football tops as well. So, who is the biggest? Word this properly, right? So, whose shirt have you got? The biggest player shirt.
Nobody really. I'm not really one for swapping shirts,
Because a lot of footballers are, because it's sort of a theme now.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not really one for after a game to say to guys, "Oh, can I get your top in that?" I almost feel almost a wee bit embarrassed saying to players, "Can I get your top?" Because I mean, you're out there trying to perform against them and do well against them. You know, I probably wish that I had asked more players to get some tops. I mean, we played Man City in a pre-season friendly for St Johnstone last year, and you know, a lot of the boys got Yaya Touré's top and Nasri's and Aguero's and Silva's and that. So, you know, they asked for them, but I mean, I'm just one of those guys that never really picked up anything like that along the way. I was just never one to swap a top, especially in defeat. I mean, I was quite a bad loser. Well, I am quite a bad loser. So after a game, you know, I just want to get in the tunnel, into the changing room, and pretty much get away from it, because, you know, I hate losing. I couldn't think anything worse after a game than saying to a player, "Oh, by the way, you've just beat us 3-0 there, can I get your top off?"
Was it the fanboy bit?
Aye, I mean, that's not really me. And I know a lot of boys are different. They try and take it. And my good mate Stephen McLean, he's got a room in his house where he's got, you know, a load of tops framed and hung up, you know, for his time at Rangers and Cardiff and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's just down to preference, But for me, I've not really got any tops. As I say, I've got the training top that I wore in the Scottish Cup final, which I'll always keep, and stuff like that. But apart from that, that's probably it.
I mean, just going back to just where you have mentioned Craig Gowans, it was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's Scott Arfield wears his number now, doesn't he? 37.
Yeah, he wears 37. He changed.
Aye. Now, I'm guessing that, I mean, you were 16, 17 at the time, so was that something that kind of gave you that wee extra bit of drive, given that you had this mate that was as close as the rest of you were to living the dream, and then what happened and he sadly passed on? So was that something that just kind of, even across the whole group, just gave you just that wee extra motivation to kind of make it to the top?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this was a young lad who had everything going for him, not just on the football side, but athletic-wise and school-wise and such. He was quite an intelligent student as well, and he had other options he could have chose. But for him, he wanted to be a football player. And on that fateful day at Little Kerrs, you know, his family's world came crashing down, and along with a lot of the boys' world, because, I mean, you never expect anything like that to happen on a training pitch, and it was just something that, long live in the memory of the boys that were there. And all the boys that were there, we still meet up. Craig's dad's done a fantastic job of keeping his memory alive with his charity. They're helping out a lot with the new building that's getting put up in Edinburgh at the hospital for the sick kids.
Right.
He does a lot of black tie events that myself and Scott and Mark Stewart and Dan and Barbie went to. A very good event there where they raise money for the kids that are going to be coming into there to try and make it more manageable. They have a football match every year where they play one of the Edinburgh sides to raise money as well to go towards the charity. And obviously, last year we had the tragic death of our other teammate Chris Mitchell, who which was like a nail in the heart, to be honest, because we grew up, played with each other for a number of years as well. His charity is now up and running as well. He's got some functions coming up that his sister and his family's sorting out as well on behalf of his charity. So, it just shows that, we're very fortunate to be in a position playing football where, these guys have unfortunately passed away and tragic events have happened, and it makes you appreciate going into training every day and playing football, but not only the football side but the family side as well, coming home. I've got a wee girl now, 5-year-old, who I absolutely dote on. I've got a missus, my family's really important to me, so I think it just puts things in perspective, and these kind of situations are things that you never really expect to happen, but they have, and you always keep them in your mind, and these are things that it almost keeps all the guys together. We all met up once Chris had passed. We went to a Falkirk game, and myself and Mark Stewart managed to get in touch with pretty much everyone that was in the youth squad with Chris when they were 16, and about 20 of us came along and we sat with his family and watched the game and that. So it's kept us all together, and it's almost got a bond there that will pretty much never be broken. Obviously, with these tragic events, which we were devastated happened, there's a little bit of light at the back of it, whereas it's kept guys together. That you know what football's like. You play with guys for a couple of years and then they move on and you don't really see them. But a lot of us are still in close contact with each other through obviously Chris and Craig and stuff like that, and their families have been fantastic and welcoming all the boys that played with Chris and Craig and chatting to them at various events and that. So that's certainly obviously it was a difficult period, when the things happened, but we've got memories there of the two lads that we played with, and it's something that we'll never forget.
I think as well, it speaks volumes of Falkirk and the whole kind of family atmosphere at Falkirk. And I was in the stadium maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and still they've got Craig's shirt up in the tunnel.
Yeah. And
it's something that it could quite easily kind of slip in the cracks and not be forgotten about, but not hold that quite same importance, and it just becomes something that happened in the club's past. But it still be there. You're talking about maybe 13 years on there.
Yeah, 13 years on. Yeah, and every year I'm sure on the tragic day that Craig died, they have a memorial in the tunnel as well. The only thing that I was disappointed is once they decided to relocate back to the stadium, then Craig's legacy at Stirling Uni almost got lost a little bit, because that training base was built and named after Craig for Falkirk Football Club. But you understand financially in that as well, that once they introduced the AstroTurf pitch, financially for the club it's better for them, but on a more an emotional point of view, that building was built, we moved there, and we trained there every day, and we got changed in Craig Gibbons' building. So that was disappointing to see, but these things happen. As long as you said, that strip will probably hang there for years to come. Hopefully it does. I'm sure nobody will bother want to take it down, because he was there as a young kid, what to make out of Falkirk in this tragic event obviously happened. I don't know.
So, one of them from Neil Plays, whoever he is. He doesn't even follow me, so I don't know how on earth he found it. But he said, do you watch any YouTube?
Aye, I do. I bet aye.
Right, so, well, what YouTubers do you watch?
I didn't actually watch like
Alright,
YouTubers.
yeah.
I just
You just
go
like
into videos.
browse through, yeah.
I sometimes have a wee browse if I'm bored and that. I mean,
You type in Tam Scobbie and just reminisce.
no, I definitely don't. I think there'll be many videos of me. I mean, I think I've only scored 4 or 5 goals in my career, so that would be a short-lived.
Tam Scobbie, amazing tackle.
Tam Scobbie getting
That
sent.
seems a bit suggestive, that one.
I know Tam Scobbie getting sent off at Ibrox. Probably think something like that. But
Right, well, let's have a little look then. Tam Scobbie. Cheeky Tam Scott. Oh no. Right. Tam Scobbie scores winner against Motherwell. McDermott are up, so Scobbie scores winner. The Ice Bucket Challenge.
yeah, the Ice Bucket Challenge. I done
Do you
that.
remember that? Oh.
That was not a great thing, but it had to be done.
Falkirk fans singing the Tam Scobbie song.
I remember that one.
Do you
I
remember?
will not sing that. We'll not sing that one because that's got a root word in it.
Is that the one that... Oh no.
Yeah, it's got more than one.
Aye,
Is that the one about you? Oh no, because there's loads of them though. Like about Posh Beck.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Aye, but Posh Spice, aye.
yeah. Can the worst defender become... You have just been ripped to shreds. Can the worst defender become man of the match? You're the worst defender in that game? No way. Right, so apparently you were the worst defender in Dream League Soccer.
I think him in Dream League Soccer is.
That's like a FIFA rip-off.
Yeah, it's a FIFA rip-off on the phone. You're rated 54.
Well, that's because they're a rip-off, though.
You know, but on FIFA 4 you're rated 67, maybe?
I'll take that.
That's a decent SPFL score.
No, that's not bad. To be fair, I'm no one for computer games and that anyway. I mean, I've not got any time.
Falkirk in Europe.
5-year-old in football, aye, it's...
Right, don't search up your name on YouTube. Falkirk in Europe, Fat Tam Scobbie warming up.
There we go.
Yeah, Falkirk, Dunfermline fans singing after Tam Scobbie scores.
I'm sure that'll be friendly to Dunfermline fans.
No,
Yeah.
that will be friendly. We actually played a game at Dunfermline, right? After it was like the last game of the season when Elvis was manager, and the team bus never showed up. So Elvis was like, "No, we're going to march. Don't you get the bus?" So we left the stadium and marched down. But as we left the stadium, all the Dunfermline fans had been let out. So we were walking down the street, and all the Dunfermline fans got us. So I think about 20 of the boys decided to turn back, and I was just walking along. And as I've turned round, I've just realised that I'm circled with about 300 Dunfermline fans, and I was pinned up against this wall. I was like, right, this isn't a great situation here. I need to get myself out of here, and you want to see the abuse they were giving me. I had to get the police to come and get me and escort me back to the stadium, and that. All the boys had left me on my own, man.
Well, I would have thought, well, Dunfermline fans are actually nice, because, well, that is only because, right, well, it's not their CEO, but, like, like, the person that deals with the social media is actually kind, because, well, I've been into East End Park, I've also been into Stark Park, I also went to the Ironbrew Cup final, because, like, yeah, because, well, he'd opened me up to many types of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, yeah, well, basing off of that, I would not have thought, like, he was some... Well, basing off of him, I would not have thought, like, Dunfermline fans were like that.
There's a weird rivalry between Falkirk and Dunfermline fans, and nobody can quite pinpoint what it's about.
No, I know. I couldn't see, like, growing up playing it. I was just like, what is the big deal? They're not even close to each other.
No, I mean, I remember it was the same way. There was a point where it was kind of Falkirk and Raith Rovers kind of had that same bit of needle.
Aye.
And then it moved to being Falkirk and Dunfermline. I was just like, I didn't quite get it.
I
think it must just be like a kind of Falkirk Fifer thing, just being across the water,
or Falkirk. They've got like loads of villages around them, like, you know, like farms. Like they might be fighting over like farmland or something.
I think as well, just because there's like the teams local to Falkirk, so between like Stennismuir, the Shire,
you know, they're not that many
even
teams.
Stirling Albion.
Yeah.
They're not quite the same level. So you've got Falkirk, that's typically a Premier League First Division club, but then you're going to Stirlingshire, who's Division 3, Stennismuir, Division 2 and Division 3, so they've not really got a rivalry as such, so they kind of had to make one with somebody.
Yeah.
I get pelted. I mean, as I said, I'm local to Falkirk, but my dad's a Fifer, so I kind of get both sides of it.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, Falkirk's obviously the bigger club at the two anyway. That's probably
Absolutely.
That's probably why Dunfermline aren't happy at the fact that Falkirk have had a fair amount of success as well.
Yeah, but oh god, right, football, right, what's up with this footballer? Oh, Carol Ikimi, do you remember him?
Ikemi.
Yeah, he's been diagnosed with acute leukemia. I've just seen that. Yeah.
Was that the goalkeeper that was at Wolves and that?
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah, I've just seen it. That's a shame. Just so you know, if you've made it this far, our thoughts are with Carol and his family. And I'm sure you would both, both agree. Yeah.
Yep, totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, have you ever thought of going down to England and playing down in England, or got any offers from English teams?
Yeah, I had a couple of opportunities when I was younger to head down there.
Could you say what teams?
Yeah, Plymouth were quite interested when I was a young kid. Stephen McLean, who played with St Johnstone, he was there at the time. But I think the year after they actually went bankrupt, so it was maybe a good decision not to go there.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of other options that weren't like concrete. I had the opportunity to go down to Reading and train there and sign there, but that never really came to much. Something happened just before I was going to go down, so that kind of got put on the back burner. Trying to think who else. Blackpool, when Ian Holloway was the manager, they had put a bid in. It was accepted, but
they were good around that time, Blackpool.
Yeah, that's when I was pretty much carrying that injury, so I was never going to pass a medical.
Yeah.
Down there, so that kind of got scrapped as well. When I was really young, I must have been about 17. David Moyes wanted me to go to
Everton.
Down to Everton at the time, but for some reason Yogi talked me into signing a 5-year deal at Falkirk. And when Yogi told you to get the deal signed, you pretty much just signed the deal. Myself and Scott Arfield signed the 5-year deal at Falkirk at that time, or 17 or something like that. So there has been a couple of opportunities, but you know, for me, it never really happened.
Has there been any Scottish, or like top 4, or the traditional top 4, except of Dundee United? Well, that's like came in, or like been sniffing around. Well, which you know of anyway.
Well, when Yogi went to Hibs, he phoned me and asked me if I wanted to go there. Which I had said no, I'd be delighted to go. So I'd obviously got in to speak to the chief exec and find out how much they wanted for me, and they were kind of beating about the bush a wee bit and such. And then they said they wanted a wee bit of money for me, and I spoke to Yogi, and Yogi had said that They never had that kind of money. It was actually quite funny because he told me he never had any money when he moved there. And then I think it was like the season had finished and it was the start of the new season. The transfer window was opened and myself and Scott Arfield were away with the 21s at the time.
Yeah.
We had just came back for training with the 21s and we went in the room. And, well, Yogi had told me about a month and a half earlier I never had any money. He gets back in the room and Sky Sports News, Hibs have put in a bid of 375 grand for Scott Arfield, and I'm like, what? I'm like, I thought you said you never had any money. So I had a wee bit of disagreement with him about that, but that was probably kind of the only one that was kind of concrete.
Yeah, well, you probably said that because the chief exec, just because Falkirk, were wanting a bit much for you, and then well, they just said, well, let's just tell him a white lie. But they could have. They could have done it at like a better time.
I think Hibs had kind of said, but I think they had Lewis Stevenson at the time, who's obviously been there for years, and I played with Lewis with Scotland, and that he's a great player. He's Hibs through and through, and I think Callum Booth was just coming through at the time as well. So I think Hibs were saying, well, they had Lewis there, and then Callum was coming through as well, so there wasn't really a need for another left back. So I think, I think it was easier almost for Yogi to say that it was too much money and they never had enough money in that, which was fine. I mean, I was quite happy at Falkirk at the time. So, that was something that happened that. It would have been great to go there and link up with him again, but it never quite happened. So nothing much more than that.
Yeah, well, you could have been at some better heights. Well, you've done well because obviously you're at such a big club, or historically big club, and hopefully they'll be back in the Premier League by this time next by this time next year, as I'm sure most Scottish football fans are hoping, because they are a big team, and the Premier League are and they are missing a team such as Dundee United. Like, they had one bad season and now they're down in the Championship, and the Championship is a hard league to get out of. Like, people underestimate the Championship. Like, it's such a hard league because of the quality of players, the standard, and it's just completely different from the Premiership, because you've got loads of good teams like Falkirk, and last season Hibs, and the season before that Hearts and Rangers. There was loads of good teams in it then. Like a couple of seasons ago, the Championship was probably the better league in competitive wise than the Premiership, because it was just going to be Celtic all the way. But then Aberdeen started to push, and
I think when you look last season as well, even you had teams like Morton who were very much kind of dark horses in the Championship. If they can keep that going into this season, it looks like it could be a really good league again this year.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it'll be a tough league. I mean, I played 1 year in the Championship with Falkirk, so I know how difficult it was in the Championship to get out it. I think the Dundee United players that played last year will have a better understanding of the league, a better kind of feeling what it takes to go to, grounds like Morton and Dumbarton and that, and pick up a result. I mean, obviously Dundee United are a massive club in that league, so everybody's out to pretty much get a scalp, as you would say, and put the span on the works, because Dundee United go into certain teams, then people will be pretty much writing other teams off, so it's up to them to go out and make it as difficult as possible. That's why I think last year will be a very good learning curve for the players that played there. You know, it might have been the first time that they've played in the Championship and realised how difficult it is. I mean, you only need to look at Falkirk, how difficult it's been for Falkirk to try and get back up to the SPL since they got relegated in that last game of the season against Kilmarnock. So it is a difficult league, and it's going to be a tough league. But that makes for an exciting season, as you've said. You know, Celtic were runaway winners last season, with the exception of Aberdeen, who gave them a wee bit of push. You know, no one came close to them. So it ends up, it's like a middle of the table fight, scrapping. It was more interesting looking at the middle of the table scrapping for European places and the relegation places than looking at one or two teams or three teams fighting out at the top, which, you know, in years gone by, you were always used to. You know, two or three teams at the top, with like Hearts and Rangers and Celtic, and, you know, Aberdeen to an extent, fighting out for the league. So, you know, it's definitely going to be an exciting league this season in the Championship, and, you know, hopefully fortune favours us and we get promoted.
I mean, they're probably looking there just now at the teams that's in the Championship this season. You've arguably got 4, if not 5, Premiership quality sides in there. I mean, you've got yourselves, Falkirk, Inverness, Morton, St Mirren, and that's with even looking at the likes of Dunfermline, Livingston, Queen of the South, who can on their day can be a really good side. So it's definitely looking like there's a good season ahead in the Championship, and it should be a real entertaining challenge.
And also Saint Mirren is also a really good team under Jack and Ross. When I watched them in the final, they did not look anywhere near a bottom of the league team. Like, they looked exceptional for the Championship team. Their manager Ross has got them doing wonders. Like, he could do it in the Premiership. Like, St Mirren is going to be, I'd say, in the playoffs, and they might even win it. The playoffs, that is.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I know I played with Jack at Falkirk. He obviously went in there and it wasn't working at the start, but the more he got into the job and then the longer he was in there, he started to see them putting together performances and results to go with it. And, you know, they were the form team at the end of the season. I mean, some of their results at the end of the season were phenomenal. So I'm sure Jack's been working with them over the summer to strengthen them and make sure that they can try and push on. And as you say, you know, they'll probably be looking at Championship playoffs as well. So, you know, there isn't a case of like there's maybe 2 or 3 teams that you're thinking, right, they'll be in the Championship playoffs. You could probably go through half the teams in that Championship and say, you know, they might have a sniff. At the same in Morton last year, the dark horses with Jim Duffy. Probably at the start of the season, you would have counted Morton out of making the playoffs, but he's been in there and done a fantastic job. And I'm sure there'll be a few clubs this season that fancy it as well. So it is set out to be an exciting season, and it's good to be involved in something like that where, you know, you're fighting out at the top, hopefully for playoffs and for winning a league title and that. So I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, it's good to be going somewhere where the ambition is to go and achieve something very positive, rather than, you know, a lot of clubs will go there, will be in the league or in the SPFL, where their ambition will be pretty much to stay in the league, or, you know, to try and sneak into top 6. You know, we're talking about clubs here now in the Championship that are going into the season looking for promotion and looking for a title win, and it's something that I can't wait to get started.
Yeah, well, I'm sure most players will be up for the challenge of the Championship, because, well, as I've said and also you've said, that, well, it's challenging, and then you've got to be up for it to be well, such a competitive and entertaining league. Like, you've got to be up for it, and to push the teams, and to possibly will get your team into the playoff, because in the case of Morton, they were a dark horse, and then because all of their players were passionate and wanted to play at their absolute best, they got there, and then it showed. Come the playoff time and come the end of the season.
No, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of teams will be going into this year thinking that, probably looking on Morton last year, seeing them as a dark horse. There'll be a lot of teams in there thinking, why can't we do that? Why can't we get ourselves in the playoffs? Why can't we challenge for the title? And it's something that, clubs like Dundee United are going to have to deal with. These clubs, obviously, try to take a scalp in that, and that's something that will come with the games, and it's something that guys have got to look forward to and relish. I mean, there's nothing better than going out and performing well and sitting in a position where people are trying to catch you, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people in the championship that are thinking the same thing. So it's all set up to be a great season, and hopefully it is for us and for me personally as well. So I'm looking forward to getting started.
Yeah, well, and the very best luck. I think this has pretty much run its course, because, well, this has been on for quite a while. 2 hours and 33 minutes. Oh, that's a long time. So, yeah, well, I'm sure you have also had a good football chat.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's been great. Been great to chat with.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so, well, thank you for listening.